Gur mágad Cíarlach and Fáilte Ara agus gur mágad a bheith anseo inniu. This is a really important debate, and I suppose none of us can turn on our radios or look at social media or newspaper or television or anything, but everybody's talking about housing and everybody's an expert, and God love you, but you're the man with the job. And in case you didn't get the news flash, you're not doing it good enough, you know? And that is, I guess, the consensus that's out there in the general public. This is a really, really important debate. It's most important for those who actually don't own a home. It's most important for young people. It's most important for people who are at risk of homelessness. And Minister, I'm very pleased to stand here today to support you, to say you're doing a good job, to say your officials and the people working in our local authorities around the country and the people working in the approved housing bodies around the country and the people who are building homes, be they for private sale or be they for affordable cost rental or be they for affordable purchase. I don't care. I don't care what type of home it is, as long as it is a home that's secure and affordable. Minister, I first talked about a housing crisis actually back in 2010 when I was on the City Council, and I was told by many over the years, you know, not to be catastrophising and that. I'm a mother of 3 children. I have 3 young adults, and I'm in politics to try and make a change and make a contribution. And it's them that motivate me. And listening to them and their generation and the fear and the anxiety that's been instilled on them makes me angry for them, and it makes me angry at us, at our generation, that we have them in, that this situation has been allowed to develop. So I support you. I support Housing for All, and I support you because it's a meaningful plan. It's a comprehensive plan. It's a plan that actually is backed up by legislation, that is backed up by state funding. It is the most comprehensive housing plan in the history of the state. 20 billion euros sounds like an awful lot of money. It is an awful lot of money. That's how big a problem we have. And I think it is absolutely appropriate that none of us ever forget how big a challenge that is, and that we all pull together to actually address that challenge. Housing for All is designed to address the 2 core elements of our housing emergency, that of supply and affordability. In terms of increasing supply, it's about reusing the fastest and most sustainable way to increase our housing supply is to reuse the existing housing stock. So where did you start? You started with the local authorities, the built housing stock that's there and vacant and unused. And I commend you, Minister, for the millions that you've poured into our local authorities to turn around vacant voids. I've seen them in my own constituency in Dublin Central. Not only have you put money into the voids and returning them into into residential homes, you've also given money to the local authorities for the regeneration projects. The projects like Dorset Street, St Mary's Place, Constitution Hill, Matt Talbot Court. These are all existing built housing stock that not only are going to increase our supply, but also help reduce our carbon footprint. The monies and the funds and the support, the vacant housing officers, the advice and guidance and regulations, and critically, the vacant property grants that you've made available for private property owners to actually make their properties available for use, be it as social homes or as affordable homes. The actions that Housing for All takes in terms of increasing affordability, using state-owned lands. Wow, what a novel idea. We would use state-owned lands to actually reduce the cost of providing housing. Good on you, Minister. Way to go. Do more of it. The Land Development Agency reports this week talked about the potential for another 60,000, 70,000 homes. What are we waiting for? We shouldn't be waiting another 3, 5, 10 years for that. I commend you, Minister, for pushing through, despite fierce opposition on the Land Development Agency, establishing it as a statutory authority, giving it the powers, not just to create another register of land, God knows how many more do we need, but you actually gave them the powers to build homes and to build affordable homes. And for the very first time ever in the history of the state, to build affordable homes to rent. The affordable cost rental model in Vienna, 60 years, is it? Longer? 60% of the population of Vienna lives in public housing. They live in public housing because it's secure, because it's affordable, it's well built. Why can't we have that here? And Minister, I commend you for seeing that potential for our city, for seeing that potential for our country and for delivering it under Housing for All. Housing for All is a plan that is delivering immediately for renters, for would-be homeowners and for those at risk of homelessness. For renters this year alone, you've brought in a tax credit for renters, €1,000 this year for every renter, not just for every tenancy, but for every renter. You've capped rents, you've capped deposits, you've increased security of tenure, you've increased notice periods, and critically, as I said, you've introduced the affordable cost rental. For the first time, you've put home ownership back into young people's reach. Back in 2011, the government abolished affordable housing. What a novel approach that was to an emerging housing crisis at that point. The reintroduction of the Part 5 is good, but the actual introduction for the first time in decades of an affordable an affordable local authority housing model is to be welcomed and is to be supported. But in the meantime, the fact that you're actually helping renters to buy their own home. We all recognise that the price of property has increased due to the undersupply to start with, the pandemic, the supply side shortages caused by the pandemic, the war in Ukraine. Construction inflation is at over 100% in the last 6 years, and yet people talk about the price of properties increasing. And you kind of wonder, what are they thinking? Like, do we want to build substandard properties at a lower cost, or do we want people to live in homes that will be safe and secure for them and for their families into future generations? And the fact that you're giving people their tax back through the Help to Buy scheme, 37,000 new homeowners got to purchase their own home by, guess what, using their own taxes, which this government has given back to them in the form of the Help to Buy scheme. And the improvements in the qualifying criteria, in the local authority home loans, and the fact that the government and the state is taking an equity in people's homes to allow them actually acquire their own homes, that is to be welcomed. And I think it's really, really important that the local authorities, the central role of the local authorities, the approved housing bodies and the Land Development Agency has to be recognised. And in terms of homelessness and the risk of homelessness, you know, spending more than 200 million a year preventing homelessness is a reflection of how serious the issue is. And we have to get to a point, and I know you have committed to an elimination of homelessness by 2030. This government has committed to that. But the measures now that last year were introduced with the tenant in situ, I know from my experience dealing with people who were renting and at risk of homelessness in Dublin City, who have availed of the tenant in situ, who now have a secure home, a forever home, through the tenant in situ. That has been game-changing. And the fact that that will be extended to people who aren't on the social housing list, who are actually qualifying for affordable housing, that is to be welcomed. And I welcome you talking about that. But you know, I actually do think that I see I'm out of time. Minister, I want to thank you for the work that you've done to date. You know that more needs to be done. We're committed to supporting you in doing that and in accelerating the supply and the affordability of housing. Gormagat.